thee, Little Shagthorne. Dear Irene, forgive this scribble, but Mother's got all the computer equipment in her room and I'm far too huge and heavy to drag myself there. This painting by Sabrina is all I've got to hand. Ignore the dark red blotches. I don't know what you've been telling Ma. She's accusing us of saying nasty things behind her back and trying to get rid of her. It seems to stem from a misunderstanding about why you were here. I'm afraid it's my fault. I let it drop that you'd planned a long visit to Oz, but your daughter Leslie had refused to pay for your flight, and you were so upset we asked you over. Also, our neighbour, Edward Blunt, the poultry farmer, hasn't spoken to her since he came for your stuff. You should know they were seeing each other for a while, but fell out over her attempts to re-educate him. She kept buying him classic FM tapes to listen to on his delivery rounds. He said he felt a fool playing William Tell to a van full of squawking chickens. When she gave his favourite tweed jacket to Little Shagthorne Help the Aged, saying it made him look like Wurzel Gummidge, it was the final straw. No pun intended. In a village, it's a bit bloody awkward, so we sent her away on holiday. She's now taken to her bed with what she says is a touch of malaria. My husband Singen's taken a temperature and says it's only a cold, but she's swathed in a mosquito net and demanding quinine. I just can't deal with this in my present condition. The only good thing is that Ma's temporarily stopped cooking. Her last effort in the kitchen, curried brains, her own, judging by her recent behaviour, nearly brought on premature labour. Do, for goodness sake, do whatever you can to smooth things over. All the best. Karen. P.S. Forgot to ask what the police make of the dustbin situation. Have they considered foxes?
42 The Limes, Heather Green. My very dear Karen, thank you for your note and for darling little Sabrina's painting. The red blotches do make it look rather disturbed. Has she painted it since her Granny Vera's been back? Poor little mite, we got on so well. She used to cling to me like a limpet when I was staying with you and we had our cuddles. So I suppose she must be really missing me. Doubly so if her real grandmother has turned nasty. Anyway, it's nothing new to me. How our relationship has survived thus far I sometimes fail to comprehend. But I am not one to bear grudges, as you know, so I'm inking a letter for She Who Must Be Obeyed to try to smooth things over, as you suggest. Try to rest, dear. In your condition, you can't be too careful. Tons of love and kisses for you, Reen. P.S. I was a bit puzzled about you telling Vera that you invited me over because you felt sorry for me, since you and I both know that you begged me to come. But I suppose you decided on a white lie to make her feel better. Anyway, hope the ink does the trick to turn her mood around. 42 The Limes, Dear Vera. Karen tells me you're poorly with a slight cold. I hope you aren't being a nuisance to her while she is so heavily pregnant. She must be exhausted, poor lamb. To relieve your symptoms, I recommend boiling up some cloves with lemon juice and honey, and if you want to push the boat out, mix in some whiskey. It works for me. My news is that the Heather Green police have drawn an absolute blank so far on the mystery man who stole the rubbish from my dustbin. I'm inclined now to believe it must have been a starving homeless person, or, as your daughter Karen suggested, maybe a fox. However, Beryl next door still swears there was a man staking out my house while I was away. In fact, she still has nightmares about him. Looking at the sketch she did of him in order to assist police with their inquiries, I'm not surprised, but then again, perhaps that is due to her drawing skills, or lack of them. Speaking of which, your gorgeous little granddaughter Sabrina has just sent her Granny Spencer a lovely drawing of dark red splodges and something that looks like a meat cleaver sticking out of somebody's head. I hope you're feeling better by the time this arrives and are being less of a drain on poor Karen's scant resources, energy-wise. Much love, Irene.
The coach house, the bothy. Dear Irene, haven't got time to write to you about adventures, as I am busy preparing a lecture on them for Great and Little Shagthorne Geographical Society. They've begged me to fill their Travellers' Tales slot with a commentary and slides. It's a great honour, which I shall have to work night and day to fulfil, especially as I've also offered to do the refreshments. I thought it would be a good opportunity to try out some of the recipes I'm including in my cookbook, Vera's Voyages. I've had to scour the World Wide Web for ingredients. You can't get anything exotic in the Derby Dales, as my son Howard is always saying. I haven't got a cold, it's a recurrence of malaria. It can dog travellers for years, as you'd have no occasion to know. Whisky is the last thing you should take with quinine, though, come to think of it, gin wouldn't be so bad. But I always find the best cure, feverish though I am, is to be up and active. Sabrina, little angel, has been helping me by designing my Traveller's Tales programme. I told her all about the goddess Kali and her bloodthirsty ways, which may be the origin of the meat cleaver. I couldn't help noticing that her severed heads have an uncanny resemblance to yours, but it's probably coincidence. Must get on. I'm doing a trial run of Gobi Manchurian tonight, which Howard and Anthony are coming to sample. I've inked an invite to the do on Tuesday, though it's too short notice for you to be able to come. I'm sure Karen would send love if she wasn't asleep, and Sabrina if she remembered. Yours, Vera. Great and Little Shagthorne Geographical Society cordially request your presence at Vera Small's vibrant and entrancing account of her voyage through India, followed by a reception to launch her collection of Oriental recipes. An evening wonderfully evocative of the sights, the sounds, the tastes, the smells of India.
42 The Limes, Heather Green. Dear Vera, I'm so glad I managed to get to your Geographical Society do, despite the short notice you gave me. It was just luck that Edward Blunt was staying over here at the Limes when the invitation arrived, so we just leapt into the van, drove like maniacs up the motorway, and Bob's your uncle, as the saying goes. I wonder why. Anyway, as we had to drive straight back afterwards, I didn't manage to congratulate you on your efforts, which, as far as I could hear you from where I was sitting in the second row, were sterling despite the hecklers. I don't care what they shouted. I thought you looked really interesting in that sari. Would you call that colour puce? As for your cooking demonstration, well, what can I say? It certainly lived up to your promise of the smells of India. I don't know if you noticed, but I struck up quite a conversation with Alan Bagshaw, the Jogsock president, during your interval, and he's begged me to give a lecture on my Australian travels. He wanted me to do it the week after next, but what with expecting my daughter Leslie to send me a panic message at any moment to go to Melbourne and assist with her birth, I thought it more prudent to put it off a while longer. I hope that Howard and Anthony are over their biliousness now. Any idea what caused it? Do give them my love, and love as always to your daughter Karen, who looked blooming, to dear Singen and baby Nelson, and of course to Granny Irene's little Sabrina. Best wishes to you too, dear. Irene.
The coach house, dear Irene. I suppose I should thank you for making the effort to attend my occasion, but really, what with your late arrival, insistence on clambering over my audience just when I'd got them totally enthralled, and Edward Blunt's cell phone going off, and him having a loud argument about foul pest during my poignant description of the cremation ghats at Varanasi, it would have been better if you hadn't. The hecklers, by the way, were telling Edward to shut up, except for the one who was kindly pointing out that I'd inadvertently hitched up the back of my sari. It must have been when I dashed to the loo with pre-show nerves. Fortunately, my undies were in the same shade of flamingo. The moment was only saved by the elemental magic of fire. As a fan commented afterwards, they could almost smell the bodies burning. Actually, that turned out to be the dratted projector, which Alan Bagshaw insisted he'd had mended. He's very forgetful, I'm afraid. There's a move in the society to get him declared unfit for office. Several of the audience asked afterwards who on earth was the woman with the hysterical laugh. I explained, with my face the same colour as my sari, that you were, or had been, a friend. I got some old-fashioned looks, I can tell you. At least one person suggested your behaviour was deliberate sabotage. It kept me awake all night, wondering if that was true. Why, Irene? Why? Jealousy, I suppose. I've got a lovely life in a lovely home with a loving son-in-law and grandchildren. You've got Edward Blunt. I do hope you'll ponder on this and decide not to let the green-eyed monster triumph. We used to be such pals. Yours in sorrow, Vera. P.S. There were a couple of publishers at the Do, acquaintances of Howard and Anthony's. They're starting up their own list on the internet. Cookery books are apparently big sellers. They were so astonished by the taste of my bindi bhaji, I said I'd send them a proposal for a book of my own.
42 The Limes, Heather Green. My dear Vera, flabbergasted would not be too strong a word to describe my feelings on reading your last, and that only since I put a drop of rum in my coffee to calm me down. Pre this old-fashioned remedy, I was running the gamut of emotions from deepest hurt to violent outrage. What more do you want of my friendship? I feel I've given all I have to give. You go frolicking off to India, I go to your home to look after your family. You feel poorly, I send an old family recipe for the cure. You send me a tardy invitation to a lecture giving. I move heaven and earth to be there to wish you well. If you weren't far too long in the tooth, I'd think you were going through the change of life. Me, jealous of you. It would be laughable if it weren't so wounding. I wonder if the boot isn't on the other foot, and that you are in fact jealous of me, or rather of my friendship with Edward, who I hear you made several embarrassing attempts to seduce. Think long and hard about this before replying, and when you do, post it care of St. Urban, Melbourne, for, and here's something else you might be jealous of, my daughter Leslie has sent me an air ticket and entreated me to fly halfway round the world to be with her for the birth of my second grandchild. Yours in tiny little pieces, Irene. P.S. Not that you'd be interested, but a strange man who looks just like Beryl next door's sketch of the man who was staking out my house when I was away followed me round the supermarket yesterday. I managed to lose him in feminine hygiene, but it has left me feeling very vulnerable and glad to be going away again. But don't, whatever you do, feel worried on my account. 42 The Limes, Heather Green. Dearest Leslie, I've been looking at my finances and find that if I'm very careful with the rest of the year, I can in fact afford to come over to Australia to help you with the birth and to look after my darling little Cheryl Marie. I've bought my ticket today and will be arriving on Sunday. With all my love, dear, Mummy, XX. P.S. Love to Brian. Any news yet about his divorce so the two of you can get married? It would be so unfortunate if the new little one were to be born out of wedlock.
The coach house apartment, the bothy, dear Irene. Oh, for the days of telegrams, or if only you had email. Can't bear you to fly halfway round the world in violent outrage. It would only give you flatulence, and nothing is worse on a cramped plane, as I know from personal experience. I do hope this note reaches you in time. I've enclosed a photo of us, which is one of my favourites, arms linked, squinting into the sun. If I remember rightly, it was taken in Capri by a gentleman who invited me to the casino. You insisted afterwards he was a gigolo who preyed on lonely older women. That's probably true of the man whom you claim has been following you. What on earth were you doing in feminine hygiene? Anyway, dear, the photo is to remind you of happier times, and whatever our ups and downs, how fond I am of you. Good luck on your travels, Vera.
Seat 56B, jumbo jet, up somewhere very high indeed. Dear Vera, your letter arrived just as I was leaving the Limes, so I'm replying en route to Australia, and what will undoubtedly be the grateful and heartfelt embrace of my daughter Leslie. She's so selfless. Even at nearly 8.5 months enceinte, She tried every reason she could think of to put me off coming to help her, although she did, of course, buy me my plane ticket. Thank you for the photograph, and what I take to be your apology in not quite so many words. Up here, speeding through the cerebral blue sky, sipping my second complimentary Bloody Mary and chewing my nuts, I already feel calmer and less frazzled than I have felt in donkey's ages, even though I hate heights. I remember the gigolo incident very well, better, evidently, than you. It was indeed on Capri. You claimed you had forgotten to take your spectacles out with you, although I knew, of course, it was only vanity, so did not see the hourly rates written on the back of what you cared to think of as the gentleman in question's calling card. You were giggling and fluttering at him, and were about to be dragged off to an hotel room, arm in arm with the odious creature, when I took the card myself and warned you of the expense you were about to incur, 100,000 lire for half an hour. Even then, as I remember, you asked him if he took travellers' cheques. The man who followed me was of an entirely different cast. His hair was an brilliantine, for starters. He was about 40 or so, with natural wavy hair, rather like the colour mine used to be before I went grey, a kind of spun gold with amber threads. He was tall, handsome, and quite distinguished-looking. However, not being as easy prey as you, and lest we forget this was the man who allegedly ransacked my rubbish bin for purposes unknown, I went into the feminine hygiene aisle of the supermarket to shake him off, which I did. Haven't you ever noticed it's a no-go area for men? Clive was just the same when he was alive. As far as he cared to be aware, I never had a single period in 35 years of marriage. Don't know why I'm going into this, must be the Bloody Marys. We'll post this from Melbourne when I get there. I think Leslie now has a home computer, so we'll send you an email address soon for speedier correspondence. Fond regards, Irene.
Karen's Cave, West Wing, the Bothy. Dear Irene, Ma tells me you suddenly took off for Oz, so I'll send this to Leslie's. I'm so glad you've made it up with her. Leslie's a great girl and well worth the price of the airfare. I've enclosed a good luck card and a note for her, as it's ages since we were in touch. Be sure and let us have your email address ASAP. Can't speak for Ma, but love from the rest of us. Karen. Karen's Cave. Dear Leslie, how are you, me old matey? Ready to pop? Bet you can't wait to get rid of it. To think in a couple of months I'll have 3 kids. More fool me for believing Singen when he said I couldn't get pregnant while I was breastfeeding. You'd think a vet would know. He's obviously more familiar with a cow's insides than a woman's. I'm definitely having my tubes tied after this one. Ma's on his side, naturally. She thinks the sun shines out of his arse. Talking of which, she won't get any more grandchildren from my brother Howard and his partner Anthony. Though having said that, I believe they're thinking of surrogacy. Hope they're not expecting me to offer. Ma, like the poor, is always with us. She's gone quite batty and is currently insisting she's being stalked round Little Shagthorne by a handsome younger man. If only. Most of the blokes round here look like serial killers. I really miss our good times together. We were a pair of naughty Sheilas, weren't we? None of that in the dull old Dales. I have got a couple of cannabis plants in the greenhouse. Ma keeps asking when they're going to grow tomatoes. Good luck with the birth. I'm wincing and crossing my legs at the thought of it. Wish I was there to crack a slab of tinnies with ya. Loads of love, Karen. P.S. How's Brian shaping up? Have you managed to stop him wearing the tight T-shirts? P.P.S. My email address for more personal correspondence is karen@greatshag.com.
The coach house, the Bothy, dear Irene. I hope you settled in and over your jet lag, which must have been considerable if you drank Bloody Marys all the way. I can imagine what a killer feeling lonely and unwanted can be, but you're not falling back into your old habits, are you? I expect your family are pleased to have you. Well, your granddaughter Cheryl Marie, anyway. They're always insecure with a new brother or sister on the way. Sabrina still hasn't got over Nelson's arrival, and now she's got another one coming. I can't help but feel Karen is very selfish. She's gone quite batty. Must be the hormones. Keeps insisting she needs more space. Goodness knows why in a house with 12 bedrooms. She's taken to spending most of the time in the West Wing's turret, now christened Karen's Cave. There's a retractable ladder and bolts on the door. I don't know what she's doing up there, but I hope she's growing her hair. At this rate, Singen will only be able to exercise his rights if he climbs up it. I was rather alarmed at your description of the man you say was following you. It exactly fits one I keep encountering here. He was staring at me in the butcher's the other day. I'd gone in for a pound of shank, but I bought 4 pig's trotters. It was so unnerving. I mentioned it to Karen when she clambered down for lunch, but her only response was to complain about a toenail in the curry. Were there any letters with my address torn up in your dustbin? The odd thing is he looks vaguely familiar, especially the hair, but I just can't place him. Time to put Rex on his lead and Nelson in his pram and collect Sabrina from school. Singen's put the Land Rover at my disposal, but it keeps me fit trotting up and down the hills. I expect you'll soon be run off your feet. Warm regards to all, Vera.
St Urban, Melbourne, Australia. Email irene@osmail.com. Dear Vera. Arrived here in one piece, but without luggage, which apparently has been lost somewhere in Kuala Lumpur, wherever that may be. What is it about Australia, me and clothes? Last time I was here, as you may remember, Leslie sent all my luggage back to England and I was forced to improvise with your old cast-offs. This time I'm wearing Leslie's pre-maternity wardrobe, which she rather crossly won me. She wants back next week, on Wednesday to be precise. Apparently she has booked herself in for a caesarean section next Tuesday at 11 a.m, as she doesn't want the inconvenience of not knowing when she might go into labour. Can you imagine? Talk about the want it now, got to have it spoilt baby generation. I wouldn't mind, but she kept me waiting weeks before she would deign to pop out of me. By Dr. Crank's calculations, I was 11.5 months pregnant before he clamped a little head between his forceps. Little Cheryl Marie, of course, is delighted to have her old Granny Spencer back again. My, how she's grown. We've just been having a rather difficult conversation about how babies get into mummies' tummies. I bit the bullet and told her the truth about daddies putting their wee-wees into mummies' front bottoms, but I'm afraid she thought it rather implausible. Can't say I blame her. Leslie is screaming in the kitchen for some reason at the moment, so it's hard to concentrate. We'll send this now. Isn't email magic? Love, Irene. P.S. Don't know why you think my mystery man would be following you, and he certainly couldn't have got your address from my dustbin. As you know, I value order, organisation and neatness above everything, so I file your letters in a folder called Correspondence, where I interleave them with the rough copies of my missives to you. However much they might irritate me at times, I would never tear them up and bin them. P.P.S. I will not dignify your comments about drinking and old habits with a reply. Suffice it to say that some people might say that 3 Bloody Marys, a bottle of wine and a couple of brandies consumed within a stressful 24-hour period which was spent willing my plane to stay in the sky was on the light side and only common sense.
Vera's Voyages at littleshag.com. Dear Irene, sorry to have been tardy in my response, but we have had high dramas in Little Shagthorne. I knew Karen was playing fast and loose with fate, as well as Singen, with her blasted ladder, and sure enough, last Friday, blimp-sized as she is, she slipped and tumbled down it. In seconds she was groaning and thrashing around with contractions, 2 months early. As this gimme, gimme, gimme generation find out, God works in mysterious ways, particularly with labour. She's now in Great Shagthorne Infirmary maternity ward, with her feet higher than her head, a position with which I'm afraid she is all too familiar. She'll have to hold it for longer than usual, though. The hospital won't allow a premature birth. They haven't got the incubators. I must say, it's been lovely for us all to have the peace. The children have been much happier, and even Singen is far from inconsolable. He, poor boy, has to do the round trip to the hospital after his veterinarian surgery every day to fulfil Karen's demands for delicatessen food and foot rubs. Fortunately, there's always one of my delicious dishes on the table when he gets home. He often eats it and passes out, absolutely exhausted. Sheep Dippers has had its events too. I don't know whether I mentioned it, but Howard and Anthony have been trying for a surrogate baby. I suppose they got the idea from the sheep flock's artificial insemination. An agency has put them in touch with a young woman who's willing to help. Quite who supplies the wiggly bits and how they get into her I haven't liked to ask. Something to do with saucers. If you think wee-wees and front bottoms are tricky, try explaining that one to a 7-year-old. The whole story is going to be documented by Dale's TV, our local cable channel. Howard and Anthony are delighted. They see A Life with Sheep, as Dale's TV are calling it, as good publicity for the yoghurt. The TV company hasn't got a lot of money for the production, apparently. Their internet launch was a disaster, so another bonus is that they've accepted my offer to do the location catering. It'll be an excellent opportunity to expand my repertoire. Did I tell you I've got publishers begging for a proposal? Well, dear, I must get on. A grandma's work is never done, as I'm sure you have rediscovered. Good luck to Leslie. Her baby must be due any moment. And to you, Vera.
Irene at osmail.com. Dear Vera, found out why Leslie was screaming. She was giving birth to a baby girl on kitchen floor. Can't stop. More tomorrow. Irene.